Today we're not even in harmony. What? We're going off book, kids. Hey kids, welcome to the Styles Ramble Harmony Rigging and Animation Tutorial Guide thing. I want to talk a little bit about drawing, because I get asked a lot. Do you need to know how to draw to be an animator? Do you need to know how to draw to be an animator, Tracy? Why are you looking up? I'm not really a freakishly tall person. And I'm like, nah, little kid. You don't need to know how to draw. You can go be a 3D guy, and someone else will do all the artwork for you. That's some questionable hair. You don't need to know anymore. So no, you don't need to know how to draw at all. You could have zero drawing skills, and you could be a successful 3D animator for sure. And you could even do passably in 2D. You're never going to be a senior animator because you can't do the difficult scenes because cutout has its limitations. If you're doing a pure cutout show and this guy's turning his arm, you're going to have his arm look like this. But if you know a little bit about perspective and stuff, you can bring the hand out this way towards the camera and you can get a little bit more of a depth. You can have some three-dimensional space in your scene. But if you can't draw a hand, then you're going to be a little bit of a burden on any sort of a show where you're not given enough hands to handle it, or they don't have someone handling the hands afterwards. You do need some level of technical ability to be able to at least manipulate pre-existing forms into perspective, which might sound a little over technical and scary. But if you should be able to take your hand and give it a little bit of depth. If you need to do something, or if you need to have this hand grab onto something, you should be able to hack it up so that the hand is now gripping this in a sensible way. So it certainly helps to have at least a minimal level of draftsmanship. But you don't need to be Leonardo da Vinci to be an animator anymore. You don't need to have freakishly good drawing skills, but they certainly help. And drawing is a wonderful way to explore poses and balance and different things. So the minimum I would recommend is you learn how to draw just a little box man. If you can draw a little box man doing some stuff, then you can probably do most of the stuff you need to do. So here, you don't need to go too crazy on the limbs. And of course, you don't need to be able to draw it this quickly. If you need to think about it a little bit more and plot a little bit more, that's not a big deal. Drawing speed is no longer a crucial element. Back in the day when you were drawing every single frame, being quicker obviously was going to make you more employable. But nowadays you just need to be able to get your ideas out. So if you like drawing little bean men instead, so someone that's doing this sort of thing, if he wants to get in a fight, he's doing fisticuffs, but you should be able to scratch out an idea so that you could explain what you want to do, or you could at least walk yourself through it. There are lots of people who are not draftsmen at all. They can't draw super well, but they can think about those things in their head and they can use the puppet to get that stuff working. So just thinking about something like character balance, life drawing, and getting to learn this sort of, at least this level of draftsmanship is a fun way to explore that, because then you can go out in the world and you can sit on the subway and you come across like this dude and he's just melting into the seat like that, and you can just explore the gesture of that character. So this big guy is sort of melting into the chair. Oh, maybe he's got a newspaper. Like that. So you can explore the character of people out in the real world in a really fun way. Like, because I mean, just sitting on the subway and sketching was one of my favorite things to do, and I live more in the city. Now I live out in the suburbs because I'm old. But you could do this anywhere. You could go to the mall and you've got a lineup of people waiting for their coffees. You can just look at how these people stand. Boop. And think about the balance of different types of body shapes and characters. Because here you've got one guy. Actually, everybody now is looking at their phone. So your whole lineup is going to look like that. So you're just going to have this heap of people on their phone, and all of them are going to stand in a different way. And you can think about if they're carrying something on their arm, how's that going to affect the weight of their body? The more that you do it, the more you collect this catalog of different body types and people types in your head. So none of these are perfect drawings. No one's going to look at these and tell me I'm a great drawer. Like, the people on the street, no one's going to look at this and go, wow, your drawing is so good. They're going to be like, that's neat. Like, no one's going to buy this. I'm not going to sell prints of 3 little squiggly gesture people to someone at the mall. It's not going to happen. But you don't, that's not the level of draftsmanship needed anymore. So if you don't draw at all, I would recommend it. Not necessarily, like, I know it can be really daunting going from no drawing skills at all and then looking at some of the levels of the artistry that happen from people who work in the industry as draftsmen. But an animator and a draftsman are different. And that's why, if you're interested in design, animation school might not necessarily be the right place for you, because you're not learning how to design things. You're learning about different ways that the body moves. You're learning more about the dynamic range of motion and how to get movement out of something that is static. Okay, so one exercise I really like to do is to just draw some boxes. Boxes are just a really fun warm-up style thing, or just something you can do if you're bored in a meeting or doodling on the margins of your schoolwork. Don't draw in school, but I drew in school. But you can get a lot out of these little boxes. So they're a really great little tool to have in your toolkit and be able to play around with different ideas. All right, so the front view is really boring. It's just a rectangle. And then you have the 3/4 view, which is what you mostly see in animation. And that's why, because if you have a character that's like this, that's not particularly interesting. But if you just turn the character like this, all of a sudden they've got a little bit more interest. And for no money. You've turned them slightly, and this is more interesting than that. So then you can take this box again and you can tilt it like that. You know, in head equivalent, then you'd be looking at this. And then you got more interest again. This character with his head, let me just give him the same expression so he's not cheating by having an interesting face. But just by turning this a little bit more, you're already getting more interest. And this is kind of where the cutout animators fall off. So you have animators, they get this, they can, okay, front is fine, and 3/4 fine, but then when it gets to the next level of rotation, this is what separates a junior from a more intermediate or experienced animator. Because it adds so much, but it does, if you have a cutout rig, take a little bit more effort, because you actually have to give a lot more to the features to get them to work this way. And you have to understand a little bit about perspective. Right? So you can, and these boxes, you could even take them the next step further. So we could just draw a little box like this. Now he's looking up. Or we could draw a box over here. And I'm just eyeballing this. The perspective doesn't need to be super perfect. But now the box has a little bit of a reason to be leaning back. This guy's sort of leaning in. All right, or we can twist our box, and now our box is taking some little steps. Or the box is sad. We have a little sad box. And playing with this, it forces you to break emotions or ideas or movement down into its bare essentials, because then you can take something like this and we can turn it into a character thinking about what this movement would translate to if we had a guy doing the exact same thing. And it might not translate exactly, but just thinking about that movement and then translating a little bit more, thinking about the balance of a human versus the balance of a box, because we got this big heavy head on our shoulders. So if we're sneaking, we got to deal with that thing. And then, of course, our back leg is going to come back a lot farther to support us. So there you go. A little rough translation of this guy sneaking. And we can take this next one, and we can do the same thing where we think about, if our guy is sad, you're going to want to get that curve, that sadness curve that your box had, and bring his head way down. And if you have a guy walking like this, you can already, even without a face, you can already feel that this guy's sort of down, because he's literally down. His whole body's being dragged down by the weight of his problems or whatever. I mean, there's endless fun you can have with this box. Just thinking about, you know, you have a boastful box, so he's pumping himself up and feeling really proud of himself. Just endless amounts of fun you can have with the box. And then you can take those and combine like I did earlier. So you take your box like here, and you start including some of those boastful shapes. This guy up here, you start tilting it a little bit more, bringing the shoulders back, using all the stuff you've been playing with to think about how this character would be. And then once you have a puppet, it's not too much of a stretch to give yourself a little guide like this. Let's do the hip thing, the superhero stance. So you can give yourself a rough guide and then bring your puppet in on top of your sketches, and you can line it up with what you want there and get things going. And there's endless ways to draw these little gesture figures, we'll call them. You could think of little barrels, or you can actually go in and draw a little pelvis and stuff. And there's tons of books and different resources for learning how to draw in this way, in a dynamic, exploring way, a gestural way, as opposed to draftsmanship. Because a lot of young people, when they're learning to draw, and me included, they're like, oh, I'm going to draw a person. I really like drawing fairies, so I'm going to draw a fairy. So then they draw an eye, but it takes them like 100 years longer than this. And then they draw another eye, and then it's not the right size, so they erase it. And they draw an eye again, and then they erase it. And then they draw another eye again, and then they erase it because it's bad. And then they decide, okay, I'm going to do the side over hair. That's better. That's working. And then they do... but that's not really, no, and then, and I mean, we've all done this, where you work from a place of detail and icons, like the icon of the eye and stuff. And whether you're an animator or you're an illustrator, learning to draw with forms and thinking about how the stuff is constructed, being willing to make some ugly drawings and explore a little bit, that's gonna give you, you're gonna be able to come up with something much better and much more alive. They're going to be more dynamic. But if you can pull yourself away from that iconic outside-in mentality and start exploring the forms of these shapes, if you can allow yourself to do this, then it's going to serve you a lot better from an animation point of view. It's gonna benefit pretty much anyone who wants to learn how to draw, or even just wants to have drawing as a tool that they can use for exploring ideas. Falling into the teacup habit, where all characters are just standing around talking like this. This is like every animation. Hey, I'm a little teapot. Industry standard. Yeah. Alright, so I don't know if I had a point. I'll watch this back and see if it makes any sense. I think I just want to encourage people to draw and to not be too afraid of drawing. Because you don't need to be the best artist. You don't need, like, I'm never going to be the best artist in the world. It's just not going to happen. And there's only one of those people. And even then, like, there's going to be the best pencil draftsman, there's going to be the best oil painter, and then there's going to be the best something else, the best sculptor, the best cross-stitcher. So don't aim to be the best, just aim to be better than you were yesterday. That's really the only goal in art, is to just follow your own path to wherever it leads you to. And if you want to be an animator specifically, I want to encourage you to find ways to use drawing in the best way possible to further your goal. Because if your goal is to be an animator, then you don't need to know every single muscle of the body. Because I have so many anatomy books, and they're talking about your radius and your ulna, and how the muscles of this go, like you've got the muscle coming in around here and connecting to the collarbone, and you've got muscles back here, and then the connection to this one is down here, and you got your pecs coming up and going under that muscle and into the bone down there. And you don't need to know what these little muscles are called here, these little bumpies that some freakishly fit people have. You don't need to know that. You don't need to know every single bone in the hand. As an animator, that's not a thing. It's nice to be able to break the arm down into some simple ideas and to have a little bit of an understanding of how they all connect together. But you don't need to know what the bones' names are in there, or all these little hand bones. You don't need to know what they are. You just need a general idea of their shapes. So for me, I really like the Bridgman books. Bridgman anatomy books. So if you search for that, you'll find tons of resources. There's PDFs online because they're not new. Hale, his books are really popular. The Force books, it's like Force Dynamic Drawing by Michael Matisse. I might be wrong about that. His books are really great because this is an anatomy book for animators. I really like Bridgman because he breaks stuff down into big forms. So when you're talking about a torso, you're looking at this shape. You're not talking about the pectoral muscle and then these muscles that are wrapping around here, and you got muscles coming down here, and you got the obliques, these ones, and then you've got these bones, and like there's so much anatomy. There's just so much stuff that you don't need to know what details of the names of all the... You're not performing surgery. You just need to know the big shapes. So if you are an animator and you just want to do some gesture drawings, if you break your torso down into that, that's fine. That's plenty. You've got your little basket shape down here, little tube body. That's fine. You don't need more than that if you're an animator. So don't be intimidated. Draw. Everybody should draw. Go draw now. Go draw some things. Look, we're just drawing all over the place. I don't have a point other than that. Just that it's fun and it's useful and it's perfect. And 3D should never have destroyed my childhood dreams. Disney, why? But that's okay. We're moving on, right? I'm just gonna stop. Just go draw things. It's fun. Like, share, subscribe. All those things internet people ask you to do. And I will see you in the next video. Which I also have no plan for. This is so pro.